awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Ripe for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically first they will come for the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits harvested. Might be I'm all done watching the populace being disarmed in the guise of an armistice. Watching a woman collapse on the floor who will rise no more. She is wheeled out the door and you're next in line for the pharmacist. If you can get me to vote, it's a hard no confidence. But part of the charm of deception is politics wearing the mask of incompetence. It's all in the art of austerity, darling. It's all in the slide of the providence. Until home is as wide as your cubicle height and is only as deep as your coffin is. Maybe I'm miles away from impatience, aching to break off the head of the snake where the capital lust, reptile brain, and the margin of profit is. Like off with his. Like off with his.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe?
us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper's stretch. Ah, how sweet, she said. Bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead, where the thin blue line meets razor's edge, and where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death and drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections step by step till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs, all laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer, that 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers, who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still, the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. And the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, bleeds you dry, then dines on the dead. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead.
gun straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unstead, and your eyes turn blind to the signs on red. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see it, it's fed. Never your mind, then it grinds your mind, then it grinds yourself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead.
Here's where our leaders would see us all led.
Mother and baby on razor's edge. Don't give a shit what your paper said.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out. Knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I've tried to block the light out. Knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you close.
I really want to set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me, well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
Who are these people?
How about we do that? I know what it is. Is that intro set for the old intro? My timing's on that. But anyway, welcome everyone to INN News. We're here for a very special episode. First off, though, we have some business to attend to.
Yes.
Hold on. Let me.
This happened Monday.
Yes.
That thing happened
Yes.
on Monday.
There we go.
You guys.
You did it.
I don't know what. I don't know what juju we caused for people to subscribe to us. We got a ton of subs over the weekend, and that pushed us.
Appreciate you.
Above and beyond what we needed to hit that 1,000 mark. So we just want to say a huge thank you for everybody, who has supported us. Being new, it's kind of hard to kind of gain, allies and a community that has really kind of believe in you. And you guys have really believed in us. Retweeted our stuff. Made comments, very nice for the most part, and just thanks to you guys, we hit it on Monday. And so we're looking forward to now obviously continuing to grow. And now that we're monetized as of like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yep. You can go on that, hit the old super chat button if you want.
You can now give us money and let make us be the drifters that we want to be. No. No. But so definitely, obviously it takes a lot of work to do this, and we want to grow as far as having more people who are willing to kind of do this, and hopefully we're able to give them some financial compensation in order to do this. So your super chats are going to be very helpful. So thank you. But how are you doing, Reef?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing? You seem to be doing good. There seems to be less boxes behind you.
I am all right, but I will admit I'm a little nervous for this stream. I shout out to Afeni, friend to the network. For those of you who know her, former podcaster for RBN. She's a member of Freedom Fighters in DC, which is an advocacy group. We both live in DC, so I see Afeni from time to time and do some actions with her. She DM'd me over the weekend to request my presence to attend this rally on Sunday for Poushawn Brown. We're going to get into Poushawn in a minute, but her sister Tina has been featured on Status Quo. JB has interviewed her as well. But Poushawn's story is very tragic in terms of, losing her life at the very beginnings of the pandemic, doing her job and then getting sick due to COVID. And she essentially died, in her sleep. So we'll go more into that in this stream. So I had the opportunity to go on Sunday. I met with Tita, as I said, her sister, talked to her briefly, and I asked her, how can we keep Poushawn's memory alive, and what can we do to help you? And she said, share my sister's story. So I have two big requests, baby free tonight.
Okay.
Please share this stream. This isn't about views and clicks. This is about sharing a story that has otherwise been suppressed in mainstream media. And again, Jordan, Charlton, and JB have talked with Tina regarding Poushawn, but she died over 2 years ago. And there is some progress towards her seeking justice in terms of their interactions with Amazon, but there's still more work that needs to be done. So I just request all of you who are here we tweeted this out earlier. Please share it out on Twitter, every social media forum that there is. Please share out this tweet. Please share out the link so that more people can get to know Poushawn. The other thing that I'm going to request is, now that we're able to get super chats, any super chat that we get tonight will go towards Poushawn's GoFundMe. You can also find her GoFundMe link in the description below if you want to give any amount towards the family as they're dealing with court stuff. Poushawn had a daughter, that she left behind. So obviously, having to deal with family stuff. So whatever you're able to give, whether through Super Chat or
through the GoFundMe, which we have linked.
GoFundMe. Yeah. And shout out to Indy for linking it in the chat as well.
Yep.
Please do that. So yeah, as a result tonight, this will be a slightly shorter stream than normal, but I felt it was very poignant that we just focused on Poushawn tonight. So should we get started, Reef?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay.
I am down.
Okay. Wait a minute.
Yeah, you don't here. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll get this
right
up for you.
So what we're going to see tonight, so like I said, I was able to videotape a good chunk of the rally. This took place outside of Jeff Bezos' house. Funny enough, I never knew. I've passed by his house. It's a section of DC called Kamarama, which obviously it's basically where all the embassies are in DC. So
right.
I've passed this building before, never knew that was his house, but apparently it is. Just to give you an idea of where in DC, those of you who know the city, it is. So I was able to record, free talks in regards to Poushawn. The first person who you see here is Dr. Mala Hilal, who I met briefly and spoke to briefly. She is the co-founder of Justice for Muslims Collective. She's also the coordinator for Not For Us Amazon, and she's also the founder and the executive director of the Muslim Counter Publics Lab.
Okay.
So she spoke in regards to Poushawn. And then also tonight, you're going to hear from Tina, Poushawn's sister, and then Chris Smalls, who also attended as well. So we're first going to hear from Mala, sharing her thoughts about Poushawn. So if you want to play the video.
Yep.
We were here in October last year to demand accountability for a woman named Poushawn Brown. If you haven't already heard of Poushawn Brown, now is the time for you to learn about her case. Poushawn Brown was a 38-year-old Black woman who was working at Amazon and who was being made to conduct COVID testing for her colleagues without any protective equipment or gear, without any safety measures, and despite regulations specifying that in order for someone to be conducting COVID testing, they had to have the appropriate experience, background, licensure, such as those in the medical profession. Poushawn did not have any or did not meet this criteria, but her pleas to stop COVID testing were ignored. On January 7th of 2021, Poushawn Brown went to sleep, and the following day, she never woke up. So we're here 2 years after Poushawn died to continue demanding accountability and justice for Poushawn Brown. When I was thinking about what I would say this somber afternoon, one of the things I looked to was quotes from Jeff Bezos. Because like any good propagandist, Jeff Bezos has said a lot. So Bezos said, for example, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. What do we have to say about Bezos' brand? What should we say about a brand that's responsible for workers' abuses, for workers' deaths, for workers' injuries, for all the injustices that come and are exploited by Jeff Bezos in order to continually make him the richest man in the world? I know there's some exceptions. Sometimes he drops to number 2. But nevertheless, we should be clear in building the narrative and continuing to build the narrative around the kind of company Amazon is. That when you see Amazon's logo on vans in your neighborhood, you don't associate that with fast delivery. You associate it with worker abuses, worker injuries, worker deaths. That's what we should know. That's what everyone in this country should know about Amazon. Here's another quote from Jeff Bezos about regret. He said, quote, "In most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken and they haunt us. We wonder what would have happened. I knew that when I was 80, I would never regret trying this thing, quitting a good job to start Amazon, and I was super excited about it. If I didn't try it, there would be a 0% of regret, and if I tried and failed, I wouldn't regret it." That's a useful metric for any important life decisions. Now keep in mind, Jeff Bezos never regrets the people that die in Amazon warehouses so he can gain a profit. This is not the kind of regret he's talking about. He's talking about regrets in terms of what could have made him more money. So we need to demand and continue to demand and fight for him to be hit so hard with Poushawn Brown's death that this becomes one of his greatest regrets, failing to show and actually give accountability to Poushawn's family. He needs to regret this. He needs to regret everything he's done, everyone he's harmed, to get him this mansion behind us. And we're here to make sure that he regrets Poushawn Brown's death, and that Poushawn Brown's family gets justice, finally. Armed.
No, don't play again. No, not again. Anyway, thoughts, Collin? You there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
I mean, it was hard hearing this Sunday, and it's harder hearing it again. But this is capitalism, folks.
Yep.
You know, in terms of the result, this is why this country is in the state that it's in. And the fact that she was essentially exploited. She wasn't trained to give testing. And keep in mind, this was in the beginnings of the pandemic, pre-vaccine. And I'm sure, you know, I don't know Poushawn, I've never met her, but I'm sure she had the idea of like, as much as I didn't want to do this, this is my job.
Right.
So I didn't have a choice. But then this is a way to help my colleagues. So I'm sure, and that's what she was thinking. But that exploitation is what took her life.
Yeah.
And
the only reason they were doing testing was to continue work, pretty much.
Right.
So,
right. So
illegal
which,
testing.
yeah, and you know, and think about this. Like 2 years, almost 3 years ago, you know, like we would lock down, many of us. We couldn't go out. You know, we had curfews depending where you were. And really the only thing that you're able to do was purchase from Amazon. You know, so for those of you, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad, you know, regarding that. But, you know, we have a face of what was going on at that time in terms of having to work in the midst of that and not knowing at that time the full scope of what we know now. And even that, there's a lot more we need to know about COVID. But it was rampant, and people, you know, like Amazon was one of the few places that you were able to get stuff relatively quick if you really needed it. But the costs of keeping going, you know, ended up taking Poushawn's life. And not just her. And that's the thing that people need to understand. And we've kind of reported on this in our Substack back in September. There are more cases like this. You know, more that probably have not been reported. But again, what makes Poushawn's story unique is that, you know, it has entered in the independent media space, you know, and Joanna and JB have been able to interview Tina. So there are some people who are aware of Poushawn's story and this tragedy, you know, regarding what happened. But, you know, but as I told you guys, I didn't know about Poushawn until this weekend, which I hate saying. But yeah, and Indy brings up a good point. While Jeff Bezos was going in space,
yeah,
you know, this woman passed away, basically helping him ensure that that happened.
Well, unfortunately, she's one among many, you know, on more than just COVID issues, if that's not your, like, particular bailiwick, you know, like, There's been, I know me and Indy have both talked about it on How Do We Miss That, about people dying due to being there for storms and, you know, due to no air conditioning, due to, I mean, countless reasons at this point.
Well, I think not even that, just having to travel God knows how long
Yeah.
one way to get to a warehouse to work
Yeah.
and not being able to take a break, you know, having to pee in like basically a bottle to ensure that you're meeting your time,
Yeah.
you know, not being able to take the time off that you may want to,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Heat
So
stroke.
it's
Like, yeah, I mean, terrible.
yeah. So it's just these conditions that I think need to be highlighted more in the public consciousness, in terms of, and I think people are aware of it somewhat, um, but this is why these stories need to be elevated so
Yeah.
people can know the dark and ugly truth as to what is happening at Amazon, what has been happening at Amazon, and what we can do, I think, especially in the independent media state, can help to force change, or at
How many
least at
people
minimum
were
in our case,
at this
to
event, would
keep
you say, whole?
how
Like,
many people?
hmm.
So yeah, there was probably about 20,
Okay.
about 20 people easily. There was one other group that did live stream this, and then, you know, as I said, Chris Smalls was in attendance. Derek Palmer, who's the vice president of ALU, was in attendance. Afeni was there, you know, with people from her advocacy group, and then,
Right.
you know, people who cared about Poushawn, who knew
Yeah,
her, were there. But it was 20 people. I mean, that it should have been a lot more,
for sure.
honestly. And funny enough, um, again, I told you guys this was in an affluent part of DC. Someone called 911
Hmm.
on us, that the
Of course
cops
they
had to
did.
come. Yeah. And for me, that was very reminiscent of Force to Vote, because many of you
Right.
know I helped to organize that event. I had to help get the permit. So legally, we had a right to be where we were, at least, but we weren't allowed to go within the perimeter of the Capitol at all. Like, we were only allowed to go around it in part. But even with that, because we're walking around, you know, not on the Capitol, but near where our permit was, uh, we had license to be, um, the cops were wondering, like, what were we doing? To the point where some of us, if we weren't careful, were actually, you know, were going to be arrested. But also keep in mind, this was days before January 6th.
Right.
And they were able to go right into the Capitol Carte Blanche, which, funny enough, looking back at it now, because when I, as an aside, when I applied for the permit, the person who was offering me the permit basically asked me, "Are you up to anything, you know, funny stuff?" Basically, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure that wasn't a question that they would ask normally, but people knew about January 6th and what was going on. Like, people knew in DC knew for weeks prior to.
Mm.
So it wasn't a surprise, but I felt she felt like we were connected with that. So, you know, so I was like, no. And, you know, and Mala actually said it, which I wish I recorded, but that she mentioned that the fact that the cops were called, like someone called 911
Mm.
on us. 20 people outside Jeff Bezos' house.
Yeah.
We were considered a threat. The working class is considered a threat. But the people in government, the people like Bezos, the elites, when they do stuff like this, they're not considered a threat. So it's just that dichotomy there of, you know, having, you know, people scared, or we infiltrated their idyllic neighborhood that that they were willing to call the police on us. Unfortunately, they didn't do anything, so that was good in this regard. But I could imagine if there were more people, like what might have happened in that case.
Mm.
But yeah, as I said, this is capitalism for you, and the ugly sin that it is in regards to how it took Poushawon's life.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You ready for the next
as
one?
I said, but before we do that, I just need, that's a little
Get that all out.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that all out. So yeah, so like I said, fam, please like, share. If you're new to us, welcome. We're very glad that you're here for probably more summer than usual stream. And as I said earlier, now that we're monetized now, we are able to get super chats now. But any super chats that we do get tonight, will go towards Poushawn's GoFundMe. You can also find the link in the description if you want to give to the GoFundMe more directly.
Nice.
But at minimum, please share this stream, as I promised Tina, who we're going to hear from next, who's going to give her talk regarding, her sister and the memory that she has for her. So,
yeah,
I'm ready when you are.
Whenever. So you want to cue this up a little bit?
So yeah, as I said, this is Tina Brown. So this is Poushawon's sister. So obviously having to, kind of live on the legacy of her sister and, having to kind of fight Amazon right now in light of what happened to her. So
yeah,
she'll explain better than I possibly could.
Cool.
So.
First, I want to thank you guys. Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. The support, just seeing everybody here, it reminds me of when we were in New York. Everyone that came out to support. I want to apologize in advance. I'm not feeling too well. Today, 2 years ago on this day, I lost my sister. I said I wasn't going to cry today because this is a celebration. It took me a long time to say celebration because when you celebrate something, it seems like you're happy about it. I'm not happy about the death of my sister. But like I said, to this day, 2 years ago, my sister died. 15 minutes from here, she worked at Amazon DDC3 location. And I don't know if you guys know the story, but I'm going to tell it. I'm going to continue to tell the story to people who know, people who don't know. My sister worked in Springfield at the DDC3 location. I also worked there. She started in 2018. She started off as a driver. From a driver, she went to Fresh. From Fresh, she went to Prime. Then she went to the warehouse, DDC3. And for those 2 years, she was on the night shift as a sorter. And then in April of 2020, March 2020, COVID came. Between March and May, my sister complained vigorously to Amazon about the unsafe conditions of the warehouse and scared with the COVID, still having to work, the threatening of not having any PTO, being fired. So in June, they sent her a letter and said because she was such an outstanding employee and they appreciated her caring and compassion for the warehouse, they were going to be moving her to the COVID safety department. And therefore, she was a safety champion. And her job was entitled to take temperatures, tell people to stand 6 feet away from each other, make sure everyone had masks. So from June until around April, because like I said, I worked there. Amazon, Jeff said that he was going to have its own COVID testing center. We didn't think anything about it. We didn't know what it was. We started in the news, we heard around the warehouse, but Never would I have thought that Amazon employees, us, just single individuals, just came there to be night sorters, package handlers. We are COVID testing. So my sister was illegally COVID testing. She was instructed to illegally COVID test, and she was trained by another Amazon employee to stick a Q-tip swab in the nose to do a COVID test with no proper PPE, with no gloves, no mask, just a regular Amazon check mask inside the warehouse. My sister COVID tested illegally for Amazon against the CDC and FDA regulations. Amazon had, at that time and now, enough money in the world to hire doctors, nurses to come out. My sister was not a doctor, she was not a nurse, she was not an LPN, an RN, or a CNA. She had nothing to do with the medical field. She had a degree in human resources. None of that was ever explained to her. So I want to say this. Someone called me this last week and they said, you shouldn't say when your sister worked for the company that she did every shift in the warehouse and that she loved that company. And I'm going to say the truth. I'm always going to say it. I'm always going to speak the truth. No matter how I feel about Amazon, my sister was a loyal, she was a faithful, she was a dedicated, a devoted employee. She worked every shift in that warehouse. And you know how she worked every shift? It's because she knew the warehouse. I only worked one shift, and that was my shift. My sister never said no. She never said no. She came in early, she stayed late. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm always going to say the truth. For 2 years now, I feel like I and Chris, we have marched around this world speaking about my sister and the injustice that's done on her, the indirect murder from Jeff Bezos' Amazon, forcing my sister to illegally COVID test when there was no vaccination out. This virus killed millions of people. I have no clue what he was thinking. And on January 8th, 2021, as I go back to this day, as I stood over my sister, and I keep thinking to myself, did I do everything? When I made that first call to her that Friday morning, that second call, I should have sent somebody the second time she didn't answer the phone. I should have sent somebody the third. But I had to keep it. Did the EMTs do everything that they supposed to do? Did they do? I keep replaying it back as a prisoner in my mind is because my sister was always on time. She was never late. I'm always late. But she was always on time. And that first phone call, by the time she didn't answer the phone, the second phone call, I should have sent somebody. I should have sent someone. I shouldn't have waited until the third time to call her. But I have to go, like my grandma said, to the root. Whether I send somebody at the second, first, third, or the EMTs did their job or not, the root of the problem is Jeff Bezos having employees that had no medical profession illegally COVID test. They had no business being put in harm's way. And to think that it's 2 years now, and I'm still speaking and talking about the injustice done on my sister. It's disgusting. But today, I'm going to celebrate my sister. I'm thankful all of you guys came out. And Dukes, I told you on that day, before they took you to the morgue, I'm going to keep every promise. I remember everything you told me. I got your back, your front, your side. I got everything. I am your keeper. I'm going to keep every promise I made to you as long as I have a breath in my body and even after that. And I'm going to say to you that justice is this year. Justice is coming. And I mean that. And everyone here has to know that. So I want to say I love you. I miss you. It's not a day that doesn't go by. I do not think about you. I'm telling you, I'm not going to leave no stone unturned, no paper not filed. I'm going to get justice for you. And I love you so much. Please keep me. Please keep me safe. Please hold me. Please protect me. Please continue to watch me and have my back. And I know you're here. I know not in the physical, but I hear you talk to me. I see you in my dreams. And please continue to come see me in my dreams. Please talk to me. Please guide me. I love you so much. Thank you, guys.
Just sad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like as Tina said, she wasn't a nurse. She wasn't a medical professional. She had no right to do what she did. But as Tina said, she had to do it in order to keep her job.
Right.
And it cost her life.
Yep.
So, and as I said, she left behind a teenage daughter who, like Poushawn left a daughter behind, who has to go on without her mom in light of doing what she had to do in order to sustain a living, to support her family. And I think that's what sucks the most about this.
Yeah.
Is this was a matter of survival. And I think at that time, I can kind of sympathize with that because, again, many of us were doing what we needed to do in order to just kind of keep going. And we didn't know the full effects of COVID yet,
Yeah.
but for many of us, like, we didn't have a choice to do certain things. Like, for me personally, I didn't particularly want to get the vaccine due to personal reasons.
Yeah.
But because I'm a teacher, and part of the thing, especially with my union, like a lot of other teachers in my district, they were asking us to come back to work in person. I'm trying to remember the years now. The winter of 2021. This was just when the vaccine just started to come available. And part of my, like in order to go to work, I had to get vaccinated. There was a point where I could have been able to, get weekly COVID testing, but, that's like a job and a half to do, having to take time off of work to find a place. And for my case, having to stand in line for God knows how long, to get COVID tested. Rapid tests weren't really a thing yet. Taking time out of your day in order to do that. And then eventually, my district was like, no, everyone needs to be vaccinated now. Like,
Yeah.
we're removing that option for you to get weekly testing. So,
Well, and the problem with this was, they had to continue to make money. Like that's
right.
That's the way Amazon felt. They had to keep the machines running, yada, 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 at the cost of human blood. Essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is expendable to them. It's classic capitalism exploiting the pain and suffering of others for profit.
Right.
So,
speaking of exploiting,
yes.
So I wanted to play this next clip, not really, but it relates. So this is from Angela Davis. And so let's see what she has to say, regarding capitalism.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I can't hear it.
How about this?
Much of what has been said about communism in this country is simply not true. The reason I am a communist is because I feel that only through a total revolution, which is going to overthrow the capitalist control of the economy, which will seize the wealth from all of the giant corporations that exploit and control the lives of all working people, but particularly black people. And see, I feel that the reason why racism is so blatant and has been a part of the history of black people from the time we were first kidnapped from the shores of Africa is because it has helped those capitalists gain more and more profit. And if you look at any factory, any plant, who does the worst jobs? Who gets paid the smallest salaries, it's black people. So racism serves as a buttress, as a justification for super exploitation. And I feel that if we're going to talk about the total liberation of black people, we first have to liberate ourselves from the material conditions of our oppression. And the material conditions of our oppression are no jobs, or bad jobs, unemployment, bad housing, bad medical care, and all of the kinds of things that will be eradicated under socialism.
So get rid of the capitalism and you might live, pretty much.
Right.
Okay. Like,
I mean, we've preached this, but
yeah.
I think, I think just kind of bringing this in context, like, I thought about putting the clip in, I probably should have, but, Malcolm X's famous quote, like, the most disrespected person in this world is the black woman.
Yeah.
I think especially going with Poushawon's case, like, heavily exploitation, but a lot of it is tied to race as well. Black people typically get paid less, have better outcomes, in terms of housing, medical care, education, you name it. Like, it's all there. And so again, it's just this idea of like this despair and having to, again, to kind of do what you need to do in the name of helping the elites make profit, as you said earlier. And that's a system that needs to change. In terms of, we talked about this a lot, like last year, just having, to seize the means of production, whatever that means, and we said this, I think we've even said this in our Substack. Yeah, like the idea of unionization, I think, is a good first step.
Yeah, but it's the first step.
But right,
yeah.
It's the first step.
When did you think
ultimate
that Angela Davis clip was? What year was that, you think? I looked. I couldn't see it on the video.
Given the time frame, probably in the 70s.
Yeah, like 74, probably.
Probably around there.
But I mean, it just amazes me always that, like, both with other leaders that we have on the show frequently, that, like, it's still the same, like we've had the same problems essentially for years now. This is not the first, death by some capitalist who, is unwilling to give you your basic needs because it doesn't allow him to profit as much as possible, So, yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's like you were saying, even with unions, we continue to compromise, like, you can push for that cooperative and actually take the means of production back for yourselves while at the same time organizing for that said union that could accomplish that. So, but you have to organize over what you're for. I'm sure we'll get into that later. But anyway.
So speaking of organizing.
Yeah.
So last talk that I recorded is none other from Chris Miles himself. And, many of you know we wrote a Substack on him earlier, like in the fall of last year. We had some people say not so nice things to us about what we said, but I think we gave a very balanced view of him, in terms of like, we appreciate and admire what he has done to kind of help this labor movement up and like elevate it to a point where people are now talking about it in light of his situation at JFK 8, which we commend him for, and we appreciate him for that, and others who have kind of stepped up to elevate labor like that. But we did have some critiques in terms of how the message is being put out in mainstream media in particular, and even in some cases in independent media spaces. And I think I'm going to share that later, but I think those of you, I should have put the Substack in, but those of you who've read the Substack, you can go to indienews.network. You can find our links. You can find a Substack. You can find, our article where we wrote about Chris. You can also view our live stream where we kind of went through the Substack article about Chris as well. But all that to say, I appreciate him being there to come out and show respect and give solidarity to Tina in favor of Poushawn. So he's going to speak now. He has some things that I think are very interesting, I think in terms of how we've kind of covered him last year to what he's saying now. So I'll let him speak and then we'll talk about it.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm pissed off. It's not the way I really want to bring in 2023. So I'm going to apologize because my energy is kind of low today because, I just had to attend a funeral yesterday. Just had the news of somebody else in my family passing away. And now I'm here, reminiscing this moment when I found out about Poushawn 2 years ago. So I got a bunch of feelings going through me right now, and the most prominent one is anger right now. And it's only because, like our comrade said earlier, we're back out here again. 2 years of fighting and advocating for Pooh and her daughter Gabby, and nothing. All we get is a couple of articles here and there, get a couple of videos out on social media here and there, and a couple inquiries here and there. Some interest with journalists, but there's no fight for a black woman. This right here is a civil rights moment. And I shouldn't be the only one that's representing labor or the union, the Amazon Labor Union by itself shouldn't be the only one. Other politicians and prominent people that are silent about this issue, that know about this issue, because I personally brought it to their attention. And I know Christina has done a number of phone calls in the last couple of weeks to some prominent people that's going to help, hopefully. But to be here 2 years later without justice is inhumane by itself. So I'm going to fill in some gaps. What happened when I found out 2 years ago. It wasn't from the news, wasn't from social media. It was from another worker in that warehouse. The same warehouse where Pooh worked. Another worker reached out to me and said, there's some things going on with COVID, and here's a situation about a worker who was tested. And I seen her every day testing other employees. Amazon swept it under the rug, didn't mention anything about it. I had no clue until this worker brought it to my attention. So I did some research and due diligence. I found the GoFundMe, which at the time only had a couple $100s in it, because Christina was doing it by herself. Amazon didn't help them, didn't offer them no money, didn't offer no funeral service, money, relief, or anything. And the first thing I did was reach out to Christina and ask for permission to even talk to her about her sister's death. And when I finally had that conversation, it was a no-brainer for me. I reached out to Jordan from Status Quo. Next thing you know, we raised money to help, just to help get them past the burial and whatever else is needed at that time. Nowhere near the price of her life. Breadcrumbs, if you ask me. And that wasn't enough for me. We brought Christina to several demonstrations in New York City. We brought Christina in front of Jeff Bezos' mansions in New York City, as well as here. We advocated for Poushawn ever since we found out about it. And once again, I'm pissed off because we get nothing in return but grief and hardship of being in the streets. But this year is different. Like Christina said, we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up. We are going to get justice this year. I know a number of people who've already received settlements from Amazon for other reasons, non-related to wrongful death, because that's exactly what this is. This is wrongful death. She should have never been put in that position. I don't care what anybody say. Everybody just want to know, how did she die? What did she die from? The bottom line is she should have never been put in that position. None of them should have. That's the part that has to be held accountable. First and foremost. But I absolutely believe in my heart, and nobody can tell me otherwise, that had she not been in that position, she'd still be here today. No vaccine at the time, no PPE, no N95, no surgical gloves, no gown, no plexiglass in the warehouse. And she was testing next to the workstations on the other side. And I have pictures to prove it. Have all of this. Have everything. She emailed the management warning them that people were coming in there positive. They turned a blind eye. And even after she passed, the only thing they offered the family was 2 months of counseling. 2 months. That expired over a year ago. So just think about that for a second. The richest man in the world at one point in time. Somebody was making $13 billion. $13 billion a day the day she died. $13 billion a day. $9 million an hour. Almost $5,000 a second. A second. And they did nothing for this family. So we're here to remind them we're not going anywhere. We want justice for Pooh, and we want justice now. And I don't have the energy today to really scream at the top of my lungs as much as I want to. And I've done that thousands of times. But our actions are going to scream louder than our words. I'm going to tell you that right now. Our actions are going to scream louder than our words. I want Jeff Bezos to know that. We're here, and we're not going nowhere. We will be back. And every dog has his day. And I can tell you now, Christina's a fighter. She's probably more of a fighter than I am. And I will be damned if I don't see her get justice. So I want to thank y'all all for showing up today. And don't just make this a one-day thing. Don't just leave here and forget about it. She's right here in D.C. We're in New York. We're not going to be able to travel down all the time. But when this black woman calls, somebody got to answer the phone over here. I know I will, and I know my team will. I know the union will. But we need the community as well. This is a community fight. This is a people fight. This is a working class fight. This is a civil rights fight. So it's time for us to pick up the phone. It's time for us to share this on social media. Tell our neighbors, tell our friends, tell our family members, tell our household that Poushawn deserves justice. Just like anybody else. Just like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Poushawn Brown is here. So please, say her name. Say her name. Say her name.
Poushawn Brown. That name.
Say her name.
Yep.
I know we talked about this Monday when we were talking through it to prepare for tonight, but I know you had some thoughts
a little bit
about this.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there's definitely a couple of spots. Like, I mean, obviously, I should probably start by saying that, like, my support for Poushawn Brown is not necessarily the same as my support for the union. I feel like those two things can be supported separately, you know?
Right.
Because there's definitely issues with ALU. Having said that, you know, I appreciate Smalls being out here for this for sure. You know, I'm sure there's countless opportunities for him to do similar, you know, and would like to see that. I think there's a couple of things that I haven't heard necessarily any action requested other than support, which is like, what does that mean? Do you mainly need financial support? If so, what for? Like,
and he mentioned Jordan, and
yeah,
I do want to commend Jordan here for helping as far as,
and it was in 2020,
you know,
so the problems with Jordan weren't necessarily as apparent as they are now.
But you know,
I don't
money
know
is
why
finite.
that was the only one called, because there were others, you know.
Well, I mean, we talked about this, but like, we didn't exist then.
Yeah.
RBN didn't exist then.
Not to the extent that, yeah, there's a bunch of people that didn't exist then. But there were people that did. There's also plenty of like labor leaders, and mainly not, as opposed to leaders, I mean like journalists, you know.
Right.
There were some around for sure.
Right. But keep in mind what was going on around her death.
Yeah.
Forced to vote, and then January 6th.
Yes.
Immediately after that. So that was kind of, and I think for me, that's kind of why I probably either didn't know about it or didn't know about it but forgot. Because January 6th just took up the sound waves everywhere. As well as Forced to Vote on the independent media side just prior to that. And I think for me, like, having to invest that time in Forced to Vote, I totally missed the story about Poushawn. But as I was saying to you just now, you know, like, Jordan, good on you to help this family financially, you know, by a status coup. But money is finite. You know, money can only do so much. Giving money is not going to get Poushawn back. And so I do agree with you, Reef, like, the call to action, I think, and this is kind of what we said in the Substack, we've just been kind of curious from ALU, like, what actions are you taking?
What justice would you like to see? Right.
To elevate her story.
Yeah.
To elevate the Amazon workers that we've spoken about. To elevate Matt Terrell's story that we've had on the show several times.
Yeah.
And him sharing about his experiences. Like, this is the stuff that should be talked about in mainstream and independent media. I don't fucking care about Jeff Bezos. Not to say he's not the issue, but he's not the problem. The problem is
one of, but yes.
he's one of, but not
Yeah.
the big boss. You know, and going back to what Angela Davis said, we need to seize control from the elites. So my question to Smalls and ultimately the AOU is, how are you seizing the narrative so that you have control over what is getting put out there instead of trying to go through the normal channels? Like, he's gone to the White House, he has spoken to Bernie and AOC, you know, like he's going through everything in the normal channels, and that hasn't gone anywhere. And I sensed it, and I probably will say this now. I did speak to him briefly after this. I didn't record it. I didn't think it was appropriate at this point. But, you know, if any of you know, I kind of had, you know, we kind of had a little Twitter feud over the summer.
Yeah, we've had some back and forth,
I went,
for sure.
yeah. And I went to him. I was like, hey, look, man, I'm not sure if you remember me. You know, you and I had a thing on Twitter a little bit. I apologize if I came off adversarial. But we want to be in a position to help Poushawn and all Amazon workers have their stories heard. And we want to be in a position where we can help collectively, you know, with, you know, Holland's Media, RBN, all these other channels that we're connected with, to help elevate these stories to force mainstream media and even the larger channels that really don't talk about this unless if it's a trending topic to light. Like, and I asked him then, you know, like, because we tried to interview not Chris, like anyone in the AOU to kind of talk about like how we can support, you know, elevating these stories. And, you know, Chris was like, you know, I don't know, like you have to get to my assistant. And I said, okay, we will do that. So by the way, Indy, just remind me please to email that.
Yeah.
But he's tired.
Yeah.
And someone said in the chat, like I think it was Joe who said he looked tired. He was tired.
Well, and we've talked about it frequently about like, bro, you can't be the only one.
Right.
It can't be you, man. Like the
right.
You know, Colin's favorite, you know, Kwame Ture talks about Superman only exists in movies.
Right.
Like you got to have other spokesmen to the ALU so that you're not the only one speaking for it. You know? Right. So
I just feel like Chris has become so much of the figurehead for ALU that the pressure is getting to him now.
Yeah.
And I think he's beginning to see, and again, this is just speculation, but I think he's beginning to see like the efforts that he's trying to make in the normal traditional channels have not necessarily worked out in his favor in terms of, in this case for Poushawn's story, getting her justice.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, in this case, that's what you should be for. Not Jeff Bezos sucks. We know that. And it's easy to rally around that. But most people in the country don't know about Poushawn's story.
Yes.
Most people do not know Matt Luttrell's story. Most people do not know about the Amazon workers that we have spoken to and have heard their stories of the of all the stuff that they had to go through. Yeah. So that needs to be elevated. So that being said, we gotta play it again. You know, we gotta play our man here. Especially those who are new. If you're new, if you're not new, you got to hear it again from me, probably like the 100th time. But for those of you who are new, this is what our spiritual advisor, Kwame Ture, said many years ago in terms of organization and mobilization.
Verse 9, chapter 6.
Verse 9, chapter
Corinthians.
6. Sure
You must not get confused between mobilization and organization. The confusion can be compounded if one doesn't study properly Dr. King and doesn't know him. Dr. King was one of the greatest mobilizers this century's ever seen, but he never organized. He was not an organizer. And for him, he didn't need organizing. After all, Dr. King was a reformist. When you're a reformist, all you need to do is to put pressure on the people to tell them to do right. That's all Dr. King saw as his job, was to put pressure on the American government to show them that they should live up to the Constitution. That was his task.
Just in case people were wondering. That.
Right. And I feel that's what we're doing now. Like,
are you a reformist or are you an organizer?
Just do right. Do right by Poushawn. Like, that's not enough.
Yeah.
That's not enough for Amazon workers. Keep going.
When you want power, you organize. Because you don't want to put influence, you want to seize power for yourself and do for yourself what you're putting pressure for the others to do for you.
Like,
that's what I want.
Yes.
From Amazon workers.
Power, you mean? Yeah, absolutely.
Power.
How do you keep this from happening again?
Right. How do we keep this from happening again? How can we have no more Poushawns after this?
Yes.
And ensure that this doesn't happen again. And I feel that Chris is not necessarily speaking to that.
Right. Or what solutions he has to that. You know?
Right. So, but as I said, the thing that I think we need to work on, and I think that this is the thing that if we ever had someone from AU on, is what we want to ask them is, what are your things that you're thinking about of terms of seizing the means of the narrative in terms of the communication that you want to have out in the media?
Right.
Because really all in the media
TV
right now is like, right. Like having an arm of ALU, a social media presence, even like a YouTube channel or something where you're able to report on these stories as they happen without having to kind of wait or try and hope for the right journalist or the right politician to elevate those stories.
Yep.
You know? So you should be able to report on this kind of like we are able to do in real time.
Yes.
You know?
Hear from the workers.
Force of votes.
You know, you should have you guys have all that information. The rest of this media doesn't. And you can decide what is put out and what isn't. And, you know, like I think that's been a lot of our issue with Smalls in particular, and in turn the ALU, is what they're willing to do for outreach and visibility when they could own that power themselves.
Right.
You know, so
right.
And then you don't have to sell your soul in that regard. You know. And if you do sell your soul, you got something to pitch to the devil while you're there. So, you know, but that's us.
I have to, and just one other thought. This is, and I don't want to bring Jordan up again, but this is kind of what, again, going back to the Substack article that you wrote over Christmas. Has he met Chris since he's interviewed him?
Yeah, like,
you know,
been a minute.
Right. Jordan was like, take a break.
Yeah.
Chris just told you.
Don't.
He can't.
Right.
Cannot. Especially given the weight that he has to, like, I can imagine just what he is thinking about. You know? Can Tina take a break? You know? Her sister's still dead. And she hasn't gotten any justice for her wrongful death. And it's been 2 years.
Yep.
Or any other Amazon worker who is trying to organize around this right now, or any activists in general. You know, Dr. Africana said in terms of thinking about her brethren in Africa, she cannot sleep at night knowing the idea that Africans are leaving the very place that is their mother. That haunts her. So, but I also say this in regards to independent media. We gotta do better in terms of the stories we cover. Yeah, I mean, we get it. Like, the drama helps the algorithm. It helps with the clicks. It helps with, getting your channel recognized, and like people like we can admit we all like the drama. But if we continue to do that, how are we any different from mainstream media?
Well, and I think that's the thing me and you, talk about frequently as far as what we choose to cover.
Right.
There's definitely a few of that that's worth it, and like 10% is one thing, but I think it relates to Touré's other, subject of like, of you have to fight for what you're for, and that's more fighting what you're against,
Right.
And I think that's a big deal when in regards to, it helps to have what you want on the receipt when you're asking for stuff. Make sure those and having an outreach arm to talk about what that is and what those should be, and figuring out what that is, that should be part of the process, and you need to openly communicate what that is. And I don't think they've done that as effectively as I wish they would. So our first super chat.
Our first super chat ever.
Yay.
And it has to come from our friend Oz. Thank you.
King of Kings.
And he says, can you define independent media? I think you just did.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's independent media as a whole, the way we talked about it. Everyone tries to say like what, the space, quote unquote, right? Well, we had to give it a name, as opposed to just the space that does not have one. So we started using independent media, right? We defined it as such of not taking corporate money in any way, shape, or form, just like independent politicians or whatever. But also it relates to independent thought. I feel like that's important because most of the time, we do have to work alongside people we don't necessarily agree with all the time. So that was also part of it for us. So I think holding true to both those definitions of independent, it is part of that, So
yeah, I think for me, and you said this, like, there's a reason why there's certain stories we don't cover. Practically, it's like you don't need to hear the same story from 10 different places.
Yeah.
Number one. Some of it is necessary. But if you really wanted to watch certain things, we will tell you, go to this channel and watch it.
Well, things that are like direct stuff, like for instance, the Uhuru movement, they have direct like wants and desires, and make sure those are known,
right?
Like those singular issue groups of, that are doing these singular issue actions, I think are a whole lot harder, I should say, to infiltrate and co-opt, for one, because most people are on the same page, when in regards to those issues. And same thing with the media that you watch. It's part of that same thing. But yeah, it's just,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think basically for me, independent media means, as I said, seizing the power of control in terms of what should be talked about and the things that are not.
Right.
And having the freedom to be able to do that from the perspective of the people who should share it. And as I said, I'm glad that I'm in DC, and I'm glad that Afeni and Indy told me about this rally, that I had the means to go and record it on my phone,
Yeah.
you know, and being able to talk with some activists and Chris, but mostly Tina directly, and ask Tina especially what she wanted. And I think our mission is what she wants, is the story of not just her sister, but for people like her to get out there,
Yeah.
you know. And so again, you know, I wanted to make sure that I held my word in doing that for her. So that being said, I'm very grateful for you guys for coming on. Very grateful for you guys for watching. And I just ask you again, please share this stream. We will clip it so that you can hear each talk.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to make smaller clips from that. But as I said, this is what independent media should be doing, to cover stories like these, and
Yep.
to elevate them so that we're able to challenge the mainstream media and kind of force them to kind of talk about these issues that we care about or are pertinent to the working class in particular.
Speaking of independent media, we record it tomorrow, but Friday should be going up. We're gonna interview Brett Wilkins from Common Dreams. If people want to, you know, we'll premiere that probably around 9:00 Friday. So keep an eye out for that.
So,
we also trying to get a hold of Amali Yeshitela. I know Tara definitely will probably have him on hopefully next Monday if everything goes well. And Ian and News might also speak with him. Hopefully we can get in touch. So whenever, also scheduling a interview with Haifeng, Danny Haifeng. So stay tuned for that. Follow at Get Indie News on Twitter. You can find all the links to all the network socials and channels, as well as all the members right there at that indienews.network thing, scrolling across the screen right there. You just put that in your URL. You should find everyone there, as well as it's in the description below, as well as links to me and Collin. The GoFundMe for Poushawn Brown is also in the description below if people want to give to that directly. If people would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Anything else?
Indy just sent me a message. Tina was watching the
Cool.
stream, her mom. So thank you guys.
Yeah, appreciate
for
it.
honoring. Yeah, so thank you guys for honoring Tina. Thank you guys for honoring Poushawn. Thank you guys for listening. And I just ask that again, share the stream out and help us. And again, thank you guys so much for helping us get monetized on a happier note. But I think for me, and I think this was kind of divine providence that I went to this, and then the following day we got monetized. Well, you know, we got our 1,000 subs.
Right.
Like, I do want to share kind of what I've been sharing with Indy and Reef in terms of how, for me personally, I want to help grow the channel. So stay tuned for that. I'm talking with people about different things of what I like to do. But you know, but I think this story gave me more of a fire to want to do more.
Sure.
And so, you know, I really appreciate you guys supporting us, and please continue to support us as we grow and we're able to do more things like this, so that you guys can be more aware of what's happening on the ground, your stories, and that we're able to share them out with you guys. So thank you guys so much for helping us get to this milestone. It's been a ride, to say the least, but
definitely has.
But it's been worth it, I think, in terms of building that consistency, and I think beginning to develop our vision for this network. So
stay tuned. Same bat times, same bat channels. Anyway, fam, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, everybody.
And say, LaShawn.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.